All right, good evening. It is Monday evening, the 28th of August, 2023, now at 10:11 p.m. Central Time, 11:11 p.m. Eastern Time, as we deal with two considerable tropical entities in the Atlantic hurricane basin this evening, but only one of them is going to be a problem for the continental United States. Before we get started, let me go ahead and make it clear this is not going to impact Texas in any way, shape, or form, except for riptides and rough surf on the Texas coast. Humanitarian-wise, we're probably going to have to send people to Florida after this. But again, weather-wise, not an issue for Texas. Florida, on the other hand, unfortunately, just like Ian last year, this has the potential to be a very problematic hurricane with significant life-threatening impacts. All right, let's get started. Let's take a look at the infrared satellite imagery this evening, and this is going to actually show both Franklin and Idalia. Hurricane Franklin out in the open Atlantic is nearly a Category 5 hurricane tonight. Maximum sustained winds are near 150 miles per hour. The minimum central pressure down to 926 millibars, which is 27.35 inches of mercury. It's about 420 miles west-southwest of Bermuda. No direct threat. It won't directly hit Bermuda. They'll get some tropical storm force winds. The east coast of the United States is going to get some very rough surf. However, our main candidate for problematic issues over the next several days is going to be Idalia. Idalia tonight is nearly a hurricane as it sits off the western tip of Cuba. Maximum sustained winds are near 70 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure relatively low for a tropical storm near 983 millibars. That is 29.03 inches of mercury. Idalia is moving to the north now at 8 miles an hour, and that motion is expected to continue into Tuesday with a turn eventually to the northeast. Idalia has shown some... it's not really done a whole lot of intensification today, to be honest, at least over this afternoon. But we are starting to see the wind shear that has been affecting Idalia decrease, and that has resulted in an uptick in organization. Specifically, some northwesterly wind shear has kept the outflow from this tropical storm restricted on the northern semicircle, but you could see that cloud signature is starting to expand. Here you could see earlier this evening the central dense overcast, or that big blob of clouds, wasn't able to push north very easily. The wind shear was keeping it push to the southeast, but now it is expanding, and we're also starting to see some interesting structure here as we switch over to the 1-minute update satellite data, higher resolution. Notice we're starting to see a bit of a warm spot develop now in the center of the central dense overcast. I don't believe that is a actual eye trying to pop up on the satellite imagery yet, but what you do see are very cold cloud tops. The colder these are, the brighter, going from gray to white to even pink there. Those are cloud tops of -75 to -85 degrees Celsius, which is just an indication that they are extremely tall in the atmosphere. In this case, you can see that little pink dot there kind of rotating around the center of the system. And in all likelihood, based on the improving cloud signature over the last few hours, the atmospheric ingredients, the wind shear letting up, Idalia is probably going to be a hurricane the next 2 to 3 hours. It's just a matter of it having to go from 70-mile-an-hour sustained winds up to 74-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And that's probably in the process of occurring now. Now, you might be asking, why are we freaking out about a hurricane that's not going to impact the state of Texas in any way, shape, or form? Well, one, we're weather weenies. Two, half our team is actually already in the state of Florida tonight, scoping out safe intercept locations. And three, we want to share the information with y'all. Let's pop on over to this evening's National Hurricane Center Advisory. This is hot off the press at 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. Again, Idalia is now located about 10 miles northwest of the western tip of Cuba, moving north at 8 miles an hour, about 200-ish, give or take, miles probably southwest of Key West. Hurricane warnings, tropical storm warnings, a plethora of wind-related issues already in effect for the Big Bend of Florida down the west coast of Florida, and Idalia is expected to begin intensifying more quickly on Tuesday through landfall Wednesday morning. The atmospheric ingredients, wind shear is going to be non-existent. In fact, there may be some upper level defluence that actually helps ventilate the hurricane and allow it to actually intensify more quickly. The sea surface temperatures we'll talk about in just a minute. Frankly, just like Michael several years ago, Ian last year, unfortunately, it does appear like we are poised for a rapid intensification episode where Idalia, tonight at 10 p.m., is going to go from a tropical storm. By this time tomorrow night, it is entirely plausible we are dealing with a Category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane Idalia. Once the rapid intensification episode begins, it is probable that this is going to intensify extremely rapidly. How strong is it going to get? I mean, the only mitigating factor is the rate of intensification and landfall. It's probably going to be intensifying until it makes landfall. So if it's intensifying at a faster pace, the sky is the metaphorical limit. This has the potential to be a very bad hurricane. This is probably going to, in addition to the potential for destructive hurricane force winds, storm surge, just like Ian last year, has the potential to be catastrophic. Because of the orientation of the western coast of Florida and the Gulf of Mexico, plus the Big Bend, the coastline here is extremely susceptible to storm surge. And we're already expecting a storm surge of 8 to 12 feet across portions of the Big Bend of Florida down towards Tampa Bay, 4 to 7 feet in Tampa Bay, down to 1 to 3 feet in the Florida Keys. And keep in mind, if this hurricane ends up, this is under the assumption the hurricane is going to be at about 120 mile an hour sustained winds at landfall. If we end up going yippee-ki-yay with the intensification rate, for the lack of a more scientific term, this is going to have to go up too. And this is already quite dangerous. So, another reason we're concerned, here are the sea surface temperatures as of yesterday across the Gulf of Mexico. These are in Celsius. You can see the hurricane itself now is over about 28 to 29 degrees Celsius waters. That's about 84 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be moving over a warm eddy in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Sea surface temperatures of 30.5 to 32 degrees Celsius. That is 87 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. The lack of wind shear, which could otherwise keep this system in check, means this is going to be gasoline to a hurricane. So this is going to end up likely resulting in a very significant rate of intensification. And that is why there are evacuation orders in place for Florida, the west coast of Florida, the Big Bend of Florida. So I'll turn the track back on here, and we'll go over the key messages from the National Hurricane Center real quick. I'm just going to read them directly. There is a danger of life-threatening storm surge inundation along portions of the Florida Gulf Coast where a storm surge warning is in effect, including Tampa Bay and the Big Bend region of Florida. Inundation of 8 to 12 feet above ground level is expected across parts of the Big Bend into West Florida. Residents in these areas should follow any advice given by local officials, which means get out if you're told to get out. Hurricane conditions are expected within portions of the hurricane warning area along the Florida Gulf Coast, with the potential for destructive winds where the core of Idalia moves onshore. Strong winds will also spread inland across portions of northern Florida near the track of Idalia. And heavy rainfall from Idalia is expected across portions of Florida, the Florida Panhandle, Georgia, Tuesday, Wednesday, spraying into the eastern portions of North and South Carolina on Thursday. And keep in mind, with this track graphic, we're going to see this actually get back out into the Atlantic Ocean by Thursday, meaning the potential for tropical storm impacts across portions of the Georgia and Carolina coastlines is there. Notice how it's trying to move back east by the end of this week. There's about 1 in 3 about 30% of weather model guidance that actually tries to loop it back around and bring it back sometime next week. We're going to have to watch for that. It's happened before, but it doesn't happen too often. So that is the latest on Idalia this evening. We do have storm chasers setting up in Florida tonight and tomorrow. They're going to, actually, they've already scoped out safe locations. They have their target areas set, safe locations in place, and that means we're going to have live streaming video from them probably the second half of tomorrow, Tuesday, through as close as we can get through landfall Wednesday. Unfortunately for us, this will be probably a landfall very near or before sunrise, meaning light's going to be an issue, as it always seems to be with landfalling hurricanes in the United States. But we'll see what we can do. We will have live streaming video up on all our social media platforms of satellite loop and information on Idalia beginning tomorrow. So even though this is not a Texas threat, we are there and we're going to be covering it. So be sure you have the Texas Storm Chasers mobile app. We'll have live streaming storm chase video in the app. We'll have video updates throughout Tuesday and Wednesday, and we'll be watching this. Just as we'll be watching any sort of Texas weather mischief, which there is not going to be any for the rest of the week, except wildfire issues and eventually temperatures scooting back up in the triple digits, but, not the record 110-degree type temperatures we dealt with last week. So that is it for your late Monday evening update. We'll be here overnight. Next video out probably by between about 5 and 7:30 a.m. Central Time Tuesday. Depending on my actual work schedule. So we'll see what's going on then. And we'll be here tonight, and if something big changes, you know what? We might just do one of these lives in the middle of the night. But until then, y'all have a good Monday night. If you're in the path of this soon-to-be Hurricane Idalia, please keep an eye out, follow any advice from your local emergency officials, and stay weather aware. Y'all have a good night, and God bless.